I moved here in 42. World War II had started, and my dad thought he might have to go into the Army, and he wanted us to be near my grandparents if he did, so he moved us to Arkansas, close to them. At that time, they lived in a house right off of Dice, not on the colony itself. I don't know why they came, I don't. They lived near Wilson, between Wilson and Marie, Arkansas, when they moved here at a farm called Cullum's Farm. And he took care of the shop, and he also took care of the commissary. We grew cotton, and we had some hay because we had cattle, and later on we had a few soybeans. Mm-hmm. That was the only thing that he did for a while. But when I graduated from high school and left, and when my brother graduated from high school and left, he didn't have enough labor for the farm. So he sold the farm and moved to town, and he started working in Osceola at Crompton's factory. And my mother stayed at home, and she worked at the school cafeteria for a while. And then later on, she went to Crompton's and worked, and they worked there until they retired. The size of the school, for one thing. The building was large, and there were 2 or 3 sections of each class. And I had come from a very small school, and the size was intimidating. I got to read all I wanted to. We had a good library, and I checked out books every time they would let me in the library. And that was one of the things that I loved to do the most, was to read. Okay. And then I learned to play basketball. Yes, I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. My oldest brother was named Jimmy, and my sister was named Nita, and one was named Santa, and our youngest brother was named Jack. Right. No. Okay. There was only one. I was born here, and that was my youngest brother, Jack. Well, one of the first, of course, was when I cut the tendon, the Achilles tendon in the back of my leg, and my dad had to help me to the doctor's office, and he had to splice the tendon like this and sewed it up until my leg was about 2 inches shorter than the other. And then he took the cast off and put me on a bicycle to stretch the tendon. That's one of the, my dad took me in and nearly fainted when he started cutting. So he said, I need to go get gas. And the doctor said, yes, I believe you do. And then I remember my baby brother being born there and going there. I remember when Jack Cash was injured, and people went there to visit the family and offer their sympathy. I remember that. I remember when I married and was pregnant, I went to see Dr. Hollingsworth, and at that time he told me that he was leaving. I didn't know at the time, but his tuberculosis had come back, and he died not too long after that. Well, he was between World War II and the Korean War. They were getting him ready. They were giving him leadership training and had planned to send him to OCS. But the war in Korea ended, so they didn't need the officers. So he saw he wasn't getting to go anywhere that route. So he got out and started to college. His family lost all their money in the Depression, and that was one of the criteria for being admitted, was people who had lost money. I think that was an indication that they had worked and would be willing to work. And that was the kind of people they were looking for.
Okay. Why did they choose Dias? Of all the places they could have gone, why?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't know who contacted them.
And how old was he when he moved here?
About 2 years old.
Okay. So that was in 36. Mm-hmm. And then 37 was the flood.
Yes.
Did anybody ever talk about the flood? What did they say?
He and his brothers and mother got on a train and went to Little Rock to the Army base up there, where they housed them so they could come back. His daddy did not leave the farm. Water got up about 3 feet in their house, but he stayed in the house, and he wore hip boots to bed. Pulled his boots off on the side of the bed, and they wouldn't get full of water. And he'd just pull them off and get in the bed. A lot of stuff was ruined, but a lot of it was dried out and usable. Of course, they had to scrub out the house and scrub down the walls. But there was very little carpet in those houses. And the walls were board, oak, wide. So it was pretty easily scrubbed down, and you didn't have to worry about mold so much as you would now. Going to the cotton field, chopping cotton, picking cotton, getting out of school. After about 6 weeks to 2 months, they turned out school so the kids could pick cotton. And we forgot everything we'd learned the first 2 months, so I don't think that was a very good idea. Later on, we started early and turned out early. That was a much better idea, I think. It would start in early September and would go to the middle of May. And it seemed as if every year the education department would extend our year just one more day until I think we got up to, when I was teaching, about 190 days or something that you had to attend. As soon as the crops were, as the farmer said, laid by, before they started harvesting, we started school, and I'd say it was in July. We went in July and August, and then turned out in September and October. The term laid by, that's when you finished your crop, making your crop, doing the cultivating and the hoeing and the fertilizing and whatever you did. And then it was almost time to harvest when they laid by. My aunt married in St. Louis to a man that never farmed, and she had told him it didn't take but about 4 months out of the year to make a crop. Well, after he started farming, he asked my dad, how long does it really take to make a crop? And he said 13 months. We would all get together and walk to the movies. We'd meet on a corner, people that lived down our road. We'd walk up to our house and we'd walk on up to the corner, and the kids from down the other side of the street or the road would walk up to this corner, and there'd been 5, 6, maybe up as many as 10. We would all walk to the town, to the movies, and then we'd all walk home together at night. If a church was having revival, we all went to the revivals, regardless of our denomination. Besides the movies, we had the ball games. Occasionally we had football teams. Some of them were six man or 9 man or something like that, instead of having an 11-man team, because we had lost the population of the school. Mm-hmm. My husband played football, but he played the 11-man football.
And he played at what school?
Dice.
Okay, so Dice had a football team?
Yes, yes.
And what year was this?
49.
49.
Mm-hmm.
Did they always keep the football team, or did you say it?
No, because we lost so much population during the 40s when people went north to work in the factories, mm-hmm. And our school population dropped down. And another thing, teachers were hard to find because teachers left because they could make such a much better living working in those factories than they could teaching, because teachers didn't get much. I started teaching at $120 a month. I started in 43, I think. 53, 53. Started out in the 5th grade, and then I went to the 2nd grade, and then I think they put me in the 4th grade. I ended up, in the 33 years I taught, teaching at every level, because my husband was the principal, and my high school basketball coach was the superintendent. And if I was teaching the 5th grade and the 2nd grade was open and somebody came in and applied for the 5th grade, they hired me and put me in the 2nd. So they switched me around sometimes every year. Be teaching 1st grade one year, seniors, history to seniors the next year. When our son, oldest son, started playing, he was coaching and teaching biology. And they hired, our son started playing basketball and he didn't want to have to coach our son. And so they had hired him as principal. So I can't remember what year that was. But he coached several years. And then he was principal several years too. Going to the football game when my husband was playing, it wasn't my husband then. I read a lot. Where everybody else was out at the pop shop dancing, I was somewhere curled up reading. I didn't go to the pop shop to dance. My sisters did and were good, and my brothers did, and they were good dancers, but I never learned because I read mostly. The pop shop was the place to go because they had the jukebox and they let them dance in there. And it was cheap. You could go in there and get a hamburger for a dime and a Coke for a nickel, and you still had enough to buy popcorn over at the theater. And we went to the theater too. We went to the movies. The seats weren't very comfortable. They were the wooden seats. They had no cushions. They were wooden seats.
Were they like individual seats?
Yes, they were individual seats. A regular theater, you know, slanted, everything, projectors. There were a lot of cowboy shows on Saturday, a lot of mysteries, a lot of romance, a lot of scaries on the midnight Saturday show. In fact, I remember one night, well, it wasn't my husband then, but my boyfriend and I had gone to a movie and we saw The Invisible Man. And when we came out, it was pouring down rain. I mean, just pouring down rain. And we managed to get to my house and he got turned around, but it was just a sheet of rain. So I said, well, I'm not going in. So we turned the radio on. We were listening to the radio and talking. And he had turned the lights off, the headlights. And all of a sudden I said, see if it's still raining this hard. And he reached over and turned the lights on. And this boy was running down the road and he threw up his hands just before he hit the car. And it scared me. I didn't sleep well that night. I could see him throwing up his hand and I could see the tracks in the snow where the Invisible Man walked, and that's all you could see. But mostly, we had some of the popular movies at the time, a lot of cowboy movies. Gene Autry, somebody in there mentioned the serial, something like Superman, and it was a continuing story. Joanne had played basketball. Well, I had played before she did, and one of my friends and I both went to college down in Mississippi on a basketball scholarship, and it got me 2 years of college free. And it got me interested in going more. And so I enrolled at Arkansas State. And then my oldest brother, Jim, got a basketball scholarship at Bryant Military Academy. I think it's in Allen, Texas. And he only stayed there 1 year, and then he went to Mississippi State and played. And his friend stayed at that college down there, that military academy. And then he came to Mississippi State. It was a 2-year military academy. He came to Mississippi State and played. He stayed in ROTC, and I think he was at least made a colonel. And there was a boy in my class that went to Henderson on a basketball ship, and he became a captain and was with the Pentagon. I can name 5 at least 5 boys that went to school at Dice that became superintendent of schools. So there was something here, I laugh and say it was in the water, that made us want to do something with our lives. When I came back and teaching, I told them I wanted them all to be successful. And I said, I do not want you to be doctors and lawyers and that, unless you want to be. But I will think you're successful if you go to school as long as you can, if you get married and you pay your taxes, you provide a home for your family, you support your kids and you support the school, then I'll consider you successful. And I had a lot that did that. But there was something here that made people want to be something. Now, not everybody was, not all my students were, but so many of them were. And I think it was the environment of this community. We were all more or less on the socioeconomic level. We were all poor. You know, we could relate to one another. We were mostly church-going. People helped each other. My father-in-law had a stroke and couldn't work, and the farmers, his neighbors, went in and prepared his land and planted his crop, and then when it came time to harvest, they harvested for him. And that didn't happen just one time, but it happened with several people around that would be disabled in some way, that his neighbors would come in and do it for him. So it was that kind of environment.